The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
A very good morning pour. Yeah, it is afternoon.
That's
legally.
a breakfast glass.
That's all okay.
Champion.
Believe me.
Yeah.
So, hey, everybody, welcome to Winemakers. I'm John Myers with Sam Couturi, and Bart Hansen is on special assignment in the tank.
He's tanked.
He's tanked.
Bart's so tanked.
And Brian
He's prepping.
Special guest today, Cyril Penn,
Bart, no.
editor of Wine Business Monthly. Welcome, Cyril. How you
publisher?
doing?
Doing great. Good.
Not,
Editor or publisher? One business.
Editor-in-chief. Publisher's Eric Jorgensen. Have you met
Oh,
him?
yeah, Eric. Okay.
that's what you want.
And then
to
what
do.
is and Aaron has like a big
Aaron's the
title.
managing editor.
Managing
She's
editor.
doing all the work.
She does all the work.
thank
You get all the credit.
Yeah.
And Eric makes all the money.
Well,
Well, no, except for it's publishing,
That's right.
so there's no
You got
money.
it right.
Well, welcome. And thanks for being on the Winemakers
Yeah,
with us.
thank you,
It's,
sir.
it's totally appreciated.
Yeah, good to have you back.
And you brought the most beautiful weather this morning.
You're welcome.
Wow. I'm serious.
We're finally going to recover from our month-long battle with seasonal affective disorder that we've had around here. Not getting enough sunshine.
Thinking about a spray tan, Sam, but I think maybe this weather is going to save me.
Yeah, just go at this. It's gonna be almost 80 degrees next week.
Wow, that's a good thing. I'm not going to be here.
Yeah, well, neither am I.
Screw you, Myers.
I'm gonna be in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
So
Are
I have
you?
no weather complaints whatsoever.
Seriously?
Really?
Excellent.
I leave a week from tomorrow.
And I leave a week from yesterday, and I'll be in France.
Screw you.
Well, that's what I said.
We know what John's going to be drinking. You're going to be drinking Ulapalakua Red while you're in Hawaii.
Hey, I am shipping a case of wine. Actually, I meant to bring it up with the staff meeting
Over
today.
there?
That's a good
I'm gonna
move.
ship. The funny thing is, you go on to like the shipping websites. They offer ground shipping to Hawaii, which is just like, all right, let's.
What does that mean?
Shipping?
It means nothing. The funny thing is, you go ground shipping somehow costs more than overnight shipping to Hawaii. It's all expensive. There's no like cheap way of getting anything to Hawaii. But
That's why a bottle of King Estate Pinot Gris costs $72 on the wine list in Kapalua.
yeah, exactly.
Are you sure one case is going to hold you for 10 days?
Well, I'll mix in a couple other,
I think
beverages
I
and
think
substances. Two cases.
I think you really
I think
should
Sam
send-
drinks canned wine when he's in Hawaii.
That is where I came up with the inspiration for canned wine.
Really?
Sitting on this was basically my last like real vacation in February of 2017. It was our sort of delayed honeymoon, and I don't drink beer. The hotel gift shop had Underwood canned rosé and Chardonnay or white Pinot Gris, some sort of white blend. And I had known Underwood because they were sort of like one of the first in the like really sort of like in the quote unquote premium canned wine market, and I had poured next to them at a distributor portfolio tasting.
Because it's a U and we're a...
And we're a W.
We're either next to them
that is
or we're
probably-
next
you know,
to-
I'd never really thought about it, but that is exactly what
It's
happened.
either them or Zaka Mesa.
Yeah, exactly. Zaco Mesa was to my right, and they were to my left. And so I knew the wine. I knew it was drinkable, and I was sitting there, on the beach in Hanalei, drinking Underwood, rosé, going, if I make canned wine, I can sell it in Hawaii, and I can come back here as a business expense.
I think you
that
need to
piece
do
of the
that.
plan hasn't come together yet.
Oh, this is business. You're going over to
Everything
do
I-
store checks. Hell,
Everything I
that's
do
what you
is
did.
everything is.
Oh, you
business.
get in those ABC stores, man. You're golden.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of. We don't have enough wine for that, Brian.
Right.
sold out in Hawaii.
If I could get Spam Musubi and a can of
Primitivo.
16600 Primitivo Rosé,
That actually would probably be a
that's
Cyril,
a great pairing.
great pairing.
Are you planning a vacation anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm going to Italy.
Nice. Wow, where are you heading?
I'm headed. I'm flying into Milan, and then I'm going to Venice because I've been to Italy a few times, but I've never been to Venice. So my wife and I are going to go
to
there
Venice
quickly
Before it's
I hear it gets a little crowded, but it'll be the end of May, and
They're limiting people to Venice.
Are they?
I think now is they're really limiting numbers.
Get your
I
reservations.
better get my my train ticket. I have
Train
my Airbnb
reservations,
already,
museum pass, everything, man.
and then we're going to Lake Como. Some friends have a place there, so
Nice. Oh, that's like the heart of everything right there.
So
Como.
pleasure, not business.
it'll be pleasure. I'm going back for business to Milan again in November, but that's for the CIME trade show, which is the largest equipment show in the world. They do it every 2 years, and I know you guys have been to Unified. It's like 5 or 6 Unifieds in terms of the size. I mean, just one Italian bottling company has a pavilion probably the size of Unified. I mean, it's pretty.
Well,
big.
it's also big equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to set it up and it's got to run. You got to show people and all that. Yeah. However, what's the newest thing that's on the market now? What do you expect to see over there?
What do I expect to see over there?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, everything that's new and AI and automatic and super cool. I mean,
Automated tractors, self-driving,
I
all
got a
that
list.
kind
lawn mowers, everything else.
There were, there's 6 or 7 things we saw at the Unified show that we're gonna, have in the next issue. So what do we have?
That's good.
You can print on your screw caps now, like this really cool printing. So Inventions has new stuff
On the inside or the outside?
on the outside,
Okay.
and it's really cool graphics and it's easy to do, and it's short runs like a small winery can do it, and it pencils out. So that's pretty cool that's coming down the pike. There's stuff happening with this thing called smart analysis, redox test, and there's aroma lock.
What's aroma lock?
It's there's I don't understand it that well. You have to read about it once
capsules?
monthly, but
Okay.
it's
a teaser.
It's actually a new twist on kind of barrel alternative stuff. And Cork Supply's got some cool stuff where they're using AI actually to get more consistent cork. It's not about the TCA removal. It's about the holes in the cork and them being consistent, so that you actually get. Even with natural cork now, they're going to be able to get more consistency in the oxygen transmission, and that's real. So that's on there.
That's cool.
There's this thing called Cloud Spec. It's there's a lot happening with the lab because it's technology. It's like computers. It gets cheaper, faster, better, that kind of thing. So
less actual humans.
yeah.
Well, I definitely want to get into your background and how you got into wine and how you got to Wine Business Monthly. But Sam, let's kind of take a step back. What's going on in the fields? What's Phil up to? Pruning over, or have you been delayed
sort of
so
the
much?
final stretch of pruning here. It's been hard with all the rain. You don't prune in the rain.
No one does,
no.
right? Or do people pull that off?
You
and-
definitely
and
shouldn't
pass?
prune in the rain. I don't know what people do. I won't speak for what other people do.
Okay.
But as far as you type in sort of disease transmission and just the health of the vines, pruning in the and it sucks to be the people out there pruning in the rain also. So we really don't work in the rain enterprise. So probably if you went over there and asked somebody how they were on the pruning schedule, they'd probably say behind. But this weather now, everything is. It hasn't necessarily been the coldest winter. It's been a above average wet winter, above average rainfall winter. But there's a lot of people who are having some early stages of bud break. Nothing that I've seen in the EV world yet. But I know Brené's got some stuff out there.
That seems to be a trend, though, for Monte Rosso, because I remember 2 years ago her scrambling down the hill one day when I was there in like February, and she was freaking out.
Brené.
You think about how exposed Monte Rosso is, that southwestern exposure, I think it's just it's a early spot. I don't think they get that cold in the winter. The airflow's, it's got good airflow, so it's not going to get real cold. I imagine that she only has a couple of places up there that she's worried about frost. So that's, and if you're not worried about frost, then bud break isn't the worst thing to happen, unless of course, you're not done pruning or something. But so I know she's always way out ahead, and part of that is I know that they start pruning really early too. So if you start pruning early, you might end up with earlier bud break from that. So it's starting to happen. I know out in like Evangelo, Bedrock folks out in Contra Costa. I've seen a bunch of it out there, but again, those are warmer places. I think it'll. By the time you get back from France and I get back from Hawaii, and it's 80 degrees around, 78 degrees around here next week.
Nice. That
most places will be in some version of awakening, which is, and again, we're about the right time. You want it to happen fast and without any calamity and no frost and no rain and, but we're in meteorological spring. By the time this show comes out, this comes out this week or next week?
This week.
So by the time you listen to this show, we'll be right around the spring equinox. The days are longer. It's time.
We got daylight savings time over.
Daylight savings time has scrambled all of our brains. The
1 or 2 clocks in the house are still not reset.
Of course. Have your dogs adjusted? Or are they still asking for dinner an hour earlier?
No. Yeah. Harry and Molly, you got them, man.
So it's. But like I said, we had enough sunny days during the winter, and plenty of rain that it's like a great cover crop year.
I can see that. Wow.
Lots of food for all those sheep that everybody's running out there in their vineyards.
I took Harry up on a little excursion on Cavedale Road the other day. I've never been up there.
Just you and Harry driving?
Yeah, just hanging and shooting some photos. And there's one spot.
Didn't know Harry was a photographer.
that there's a great hill that's going down. And it's nothing but white and yellow. And it's completely organic. So I had to wonder if Phil farmed it,
maybe, or somebody just copying it. If it's stripes of white and yellow, it's probably
it was
Enterprise.
Just beautiful, and great photos, and had a great time. But I mean, you look out from up there, and you see this giant patchwork quilt of vineyards, and then there's a bay in the background from where you can see up there, and it's not all that high up. I mean, it might be 1,500 feet up there.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, so
depending on where you are.
Views forever, and it looks like everything's growing and going crazy. I mean, it's certainly well watered for the season.
Yeah, it's. I think that there's nobody who's complaining about the sun finally coming out for what should be an extended period of time. When it was not raining during January much, but it was still sort of like mediocre weather. I think people were complaining then, but now. It's all good. The only problem is that there's enough snow that people are going to Tahoe instead of coming to Sonoma and going wine tasting.
Have you been there since the giant snow of 10 feet?
I went up last week, sort of a week later, and it had compacted and melted a little bit, but there was still, even in the neighborhood where our family cabin is on the lake level, most of the snowbanks were over my head, which again isn't necessarily that much, but it's still 5.5 feet, 6 feet of snow. And then on the mountain, there's definitely a lot of snow out there. So.
Yeah, it reminds, around here in Sonoma County, it reminds me more of what I remember as a kid growing up in Petaluma with the rolling green hills.
Right.
We lost that for a little while. It would just seem to be tan all the time instead of just in the summer. But it's nice to see people think of their old Microsoft screensaver.
Right, which is now a vineyard.
That's what it used to look like, around here. So it's nice to see it coming back.
No, I think, the last 2 years of what are last year was sort of an anomaly at like 200% of normal. Right? This was 100% of normal this winter. And
what's 100% of normal?
Yeah, which is exactly I mean, you usually arrive at averages through extremes. So having sort of an average winter, really for me has just sort of highlighted how extreme those drought winters were. Leading up from 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, kind of 18, 19 off, and then again 20, 21. This was a normal winter, quote unquote normal. Just showed how dry some of those, 2021.
It used to be like this.
This is what it used to be.
It used to be
2021
sunshine.
I played golf all winter long because the golf courses were dry. You were driving on the lawns. There was no like cart path only. That's like, and you get used to that like Phoenix, Scottsdale kind of lifestyle, Palm Springs.
The lifestyle of the rich and famous. Sam Couture.
Rich and retired, right?
Oh, God.
Well, it must be a relief to have some water.
Yeah, we were fortunate in the places that we farm, especially in the hills, because there's such like fractured rock that when it does rain, it soaks in, so you get good well recharge and stuff like that. So there was never a point where you felt like you didn't have the water you needed, but watering the whole world through natural ways as opposed to having to turn the irrigation on is definitely a better way to get there.
Is this going to help with any spring irrigation at all? I mean,
we won't have to, other than probably like new plantings and stuff. There won't be a lot of spring irrigating going on.
Mine's turned off at home. That's for damn sure.
I mean, my yard is still wet, and there's still standing water out there in places.
Oh, yeah.
Might not be by the end of next week, but there is right now.
All right, I'm bored talking about the weather.
All right. Sounds good.
I'm speaking for our listeners.
Talk about our weather, talk about our vacations.
That's
Right.
okay. Well, we're getting into what's going on in the fields, and that's going to impact.
I did get, this was ostensibly a listener question. I know we wanted to save the listener questions to later, but I did get a question about the sheep in the vineyards and why not goats. And the sheep are great on these wet winters because you can get out there and start quote unquote mowing without having to get tractors stuck and stuff like that. The goats, and this is why you see sheep in vineyards, not goats. Goats will eat fucking anything.
Rubber hoses, irrigation,
dormant grapevines. Goats are really good outside of the vineyard for fire mitigation and stuff like that. But I would not recommend goats in the vineyard, especially if you have irrigation lines, because they'll just chew through it all.
Do any goats advertise or sheep advertise in Wine Business Monthly?
Not yet, but we've been writing a lot of sheep and goat stories. It seems to be the in thing these days.
Oh, definitely.
They're like puppies.
Pastor wrote about it for the Chronicle. It's like everybody's talking about the sheep trend. The sheep trend that I want to see end is people running sheep in vineyards that are clearly sprayed with Roundup. It's like, yeah, you guys are kind of
fucked up.
Missing the point here on this a little bit. But
now that I look, it's so easy to see the strips of death underneath.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah. And you know who's spraying, and you know what wine not to drink, because I really don't like Roundup in my wine. How about you?
You
can do without.
Given a choice.
Yeah.
You're not really given a choice for the most part, yeah.
Well, Cyril, how did you get into wine, and then how did you end up at Wine Business Monthly? You must have had a journalism background anyway.
Well, I always liked wine and to drink. I mean, I like a lot of kids, I catered my way through college. I remember having to open up sparkling wine bottles silently, in the middle of a ceremony going on, and a couple cases like that.
Some people don't know that's the way you're supposed to do it.
It's supposed to.
Right.
That's why the wine bar
supposed
is
to sound like an angel farting.
Yeah, I really didn't have much experience. I'd been to a couple brown bag parties, that kind of thing. But my background's journalism, and
did you at classically?
Yep.
Journalism where?
Classically at Fordham University in New York.
nice.
And then the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour back when it was called that.
McNeil-Lehrer
The McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, now the PBS NewsHour.
Came on after Sesame Street.
The
I
Columbia
remember.
Journalism Review. I was in Manhattan. And
Wow.
then I went to work for Reuters. I was there for a few years. And then I quit and moved to California for the weather. And,
Good move.
I had been on the energy desk at Reuters, so I wound up covering energy out here, and I was doing the insider rag for the energy industry in California, and I was bored to tears. And I got a call, hey, you want to come cover the wine industry? So, yeah, I was like, maybe. You know. Didn't take too long to figure out that, yes, I
you live
really
in
wanted to
Manhattan?
do that.
From which publication? Who was that from? Wine Business Monthly?
No, this was called California Energy Markets, but I did several others as well.
Okay.
And then you got a call from Wine Business Monthly specifically?
From a friend of mine. You know, it's a small world, right? It's about relationships. So this was somebody who I had worked with in New York at Reuters, who was leaving to start what was called WineToday.com. I don't know if you guys remember that, but this was owned by the New York Times, and it was the first wine website that was really doing cool stuff back in the day. You know, this is like almost 25 years ago. Like they were the first website to broadcast a harvest happening with video.
But it was geared to
very cutting edge.
consumers, or it was geared to...
It was geared toward consumers. Tim Fish, who's with the Spectator, was the co-editor of that with Leslie Zabracco. Back in the day, and this friend of mine, Jim Hammett, who's passed away now, he was working on that project. So it was a really interesting project. They did great stuff, and of course, it blew up like a lot of .com stuff. And the New York Times pulled the plug on it, and Marvin Schenken was very happy and hired Tim.
You know, we always were into Open That Bottle Night from the New York Times.
That was the Wall Street Journal.
Was it?
Yeah, that was the
I
Wall
thought
Street
it was
Journal.
the
That
Times.
was
Dottie, somebody?
Dottie and John.
Yes, Dottie and John.
Yeah, that was. That's.
Yeah, I mean,
missed
we
Open That Bottle.
always went and found something cool. I don't know.
All right, so you're... What, are we at Wine Business Monthly already?
Well, Wine Business Wine Today gets.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
New York
then,
Times pulls the plug.
so we had a newsletter called the Insider. So I was brought in to take over editing the Insider. And the Insider was the weekly rag. It was who's buying who switched, who's suing who switched jobs, what are the regulators doing to us, that kind of stuff. And that went very well for a while.
What was the best who's suing who story?
Who's suing who? Oh, boy.
Yeah. Just curious.
I mean, the one that I think
boy.
comes to my mind right away is the Jackson family versus the Gallows with the turning leaves and the red leaf and the
That was
that was like a big one. I remember that one as a kid. Like
that was a really big one, and it went on and on and on.
Yeah.
And on and on. And those guys were arch rivals, and things changed now. Gallo and Jackson family are together at the Wine Institute, working together and cooperating. And, so.
Oh, you bring people together.
yeah, turning leaf and it was like the Jackson family label was like a leaf going through fall
I
colors.
remember that. Yeah,
And then Gallo, I think, had the turning leaf label that was like it was like that same leaf except for it was turning.
It was a total copy, of course. Yeah, absolutely a ripoff. There used to be a lot of trademark infringement lawsuits in wine. Duckhorn, anybody with a duck. On and on and on. It seems to be less lately. I think
you just you try and come up with a new name for a wine brand, and the first thing you do is you plug it into Google. And see
Yeah,
how
well,
it's
there's
done, right?
this thing called ship compliant. You probably get the DTC stats form. Well, when they've automated the COLA process with getting your certificate of label approval from the TTB. So now you can go up and basically type anything into a database, and you can see whose labels were approved before they come out. So in theory, you can avoid this stuff. These days.
Yeah, unless, like in that case, you specifically want.
Unless you want to rip someone off.
Want the fight.
Yeah.
So how did Wine Business Monthly come out of all this?
How did Wine Business Monthly come out of?
And how old is it?
It is 30-something years old. It was so there's a gentleman you guys probably know because he lives in town named Louis Perdue.
Yeah, Lou Perdue.
Louis Perdue started it, and it was he started that newsletter I was talking about called the Insider. It was the Napa Sonoma Wine Business Insider. Then it was the Insider. Then he started this magazine, Wine Business Monthly, and it was a free magazine. It was on newsprint and controlled circulation. And yeah, he started it.
How do you make money doing?
You don't.
Okay.
Then he started.
It's like the wine business.
He started the group there started a consumer publication that was called Smart Wine magazine. You guys remember it? No, it didn't last long. It lasted
Nobody remembers.
3 issues and kaboom, and that kind of and things
That's
got a
an
little crazy from there.
Venture.
Yeah, and then a new group came in, and then I was brought in shortly after that, and it's evolved over time. So.
And what Wine Business Monthly? What's your mission statement? What's your goal? What's your motivation?
Oh boy, we have a mission statement. I should have that memorized. It's on the website.
I mean, you can encapsulate it in general.
It's keeping people up to date on the things they need to know to do their job better, and helping them successfully deploy new products, like we talked about. Yeah.
Okay.
And it covers, grape growing, all aspects of the industry: grape growing, winemaking, business and technology, marketing, sales. So a little bit of everything. That's part of the fun of the wine business, as you guys know.
Because there's a little bit of everything, and it all sucks.
It can't all suck.
Not all of it.
Okay, thank
all
you.
the business stuff. For me, the Wine Business Monthly is sort of like two entities. There's the monthly magazine, whether that's you get it digital or physical, but my day doesn't start until I've read your email.
Oh, thank you for that.
Appreciate
it.
I start late.
That's usually me. Yeah.
No, but it does. It hits the inbox at about 7 a.m. or so.
Right.
And that's talk about that, because that's, I think, for people, whether you're in the industry or somebody who is as dedicated enough a consumer to listen to a podcast like this, something worth having a subscription to. It doesn't cost anything. You just put your email address in there and it shows up in your inbox every day, right?
Back in the ancient days, 25 years ago, when I was doing the energy rag, we had a clipping service, right? We had no internet, but people wanted to know what was happening in the newspapers, and it was actually illegal to photocopy newspaper clippings and then send them out and charge people. In California, we had a company that was based in the state of Washington, and so there was a legal loophole, so we were able to do this clipping service with our newsletter, and it was very, very popular. So when I was at Wine Business Monthly, and the internet is a new thing, I had this brilliant idea: why don't we send out links to other people's news, what's happening, and we'll update our website every day, and we'll put this up. And this is a long time ago, so it was actually novel doing that,
right,
way back. Now we're all bombarded with news links.
But there's other ones that come, but they come later in the day, and it's like, all right, I already read that from Cyril at 7 a.m.
Plus, there's so much in that. There may be 40, 50 links a day, and you can't read everything. You don't want to read it. So it's about not having to read it, like rewriting the headlines so you know what's actually in the story and what it's about, so you don't read it. So we treat
it so we don't have to.
Yeah, so we treat it more like this collection of links itself is like a newsletter.
You're curating.
You're curating. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, sluggish market. I'm looking at an article that you wrote about how top wineries manage to compete and win in a sluggish market. You head off. If you follow wine and the wine business, you've undoubtedly seen recent headlines about sales tipping into negative territory. Most sales executives say it's brutal out there. Heading into the 2023 October, November, December holiday sales season, SipSource depletion numbers were bleak. Third quarter wine depletions down 11.7 on a rolling trend, down about 7%. So,
well, Anne, will you clarify if that is
what
part of it is coming out of the pandemic, where we really kind of switched to DTC, tasting rooms were closed, and so our numbers a little bit skewed coming out of that, or is that just a general? I'm
sure the numbers are skewed for sure, and bounce back a little bit. So that was from the February issue that we do. So this was compiled from interviews that we did at the end of the year. Once a year, we run a list of the top wineries in the U.S. by volume. So we talk to the big guys, and I interview most of the CEOs. For that, it's an excuse for me to talk to them, get a feel, for what's going on. So that was that article. Now, the SipSource numbers, why were they so bleak? Well, part of it's this, they call it pandemic snapback or whatever. After all the pantry loading and all that stuff happened, you're going up against those other numbers. But also part of it is just that people are drinking less wine. But also part of it is what's happened with the cost of money going up. I mean, we had interest rates double in a year. And so wholesalers don't want to hold inventory. They just don't want to hold it. And there was this sudden thing that happened where wholesalers said, we're cutting inventory. And it was across the board, and it hit everybody.
And you can absorb it for us.
Yeah. So
warehouse it.
That's what happened that made those numbers seem even more bleak than they are, is that sudden cut in inventory, and hopefully that'll balance out a little bit.
And when our the 16600 perspective of that is totally skewed because we had very little wholesale in general, and actually added a little bit in 2023. So
as we should.
But again, it's like we're tiny little molecular drops of water in that giant bucket. At what point through last year did the wholesale side start to really pull back?
I think it was in the fall. Yeah, I think it was right before the fall sale season hit that it was, at its biggest. Okay. Yeah. But, here we're talking about the big guys, right? We're talking about the 50 wineries out of, 1,200 that make 90%.
Let's say Gallo.
Volume. Yeah. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Gallo's pretty much the top of the list.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. You say some think marijuana is taking its share of the buzz, and also Ozempic, that it doesn't make.
I don't think that's real, but people are talking about it.
It doesn't. It makes you
not want alcohol or something, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the natural wine scene in LA taking a hit because of that, but I don't think that's affecting us up here.
Not the real wine.
Well, everyone's just wondering what's going on. Nobody really has a good grasp on it. They just know.
It's been cocktails and ciders and ready to drink cans of screwdrivers, whatever you want.
Something
available.
Coming to get us. There's always something. There's always something. There's always some calamity.
But there's always going to be that in every single business.
Always. No, exactly. Which is, why I think a lot of these things is kind of take grains of salt because, maybe they just make better products and they would sell better.
Do you think that we've done maybe too well of a job demystifying wine? Like for 30 years, it was like this mystery and mystique, and it was this coveted thing. And then we sort of opened up and started maybe it not being as pretentious as it used to be, and so more and more people started drinking wine. The price of wines came down. No, and then now people are like, they've stocked their shelves. They've gotten used to drinking wine, and maybe they're looking for the next new thing. But they know that they kind of know that there's all these choices out there now, whereas before it was.
Well, here's my thought, and Cyril, you've been in the business, watching the business side of this for 25 plus years. At some point. And I think it was really, after I left being in Sonoma and then came back to it, that vineyards specifically started to become investment tools. And, these like in retirement funds and private equity funds were buying vineyard land or buying land and planting vineyards because, as an investment tool, not because they were, interested in exploring terroir and varietal. Is that playing a role in that?
Well, it plays a role for everybody. It's an equity play, right? You buy the vineyard, you may break even on growing grapes, hopefully, but then you make then you make some money on the real estate. Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, because the thing that's happening now is people are, pulling out vineyards. A lot of grapes went unharvested last couple of years, but especially in 2023, just because there's too much wine in the pipeline.
Yeah. We're working on a story about pull. I guess we should come back to the other question about what's driving this. But in terms of pullouts, I saw a nice list of all the companies that are the contractors. If you want to pull out your vineyard or orchard, it's on the California Air Resources Board website. Anyway, I guess that little mini industry is booming, taking out vineyards.
Yeah.
But
all of our clients in the ad agency, we did, pretty basic SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I can guarantee not one company in the United States of America had a pandemic down as a threat. Nobody saw that one coming. But you guys, you're looking at the market. You understand that you've got craft cocktails and you've got beer. And those two things have been huge in the last 5-10 years. IPA, the start of Lagunitas here in this area, and things like that. And now you have all the canned cocktails, which I just can't understand.
That's the biggest
taste like
thing,
shit
right?
anyway.
With the alcohol market, I mean, there's all these things driving it. Like you were saying, there's just baby boomers aging out and not buying as much wine, as we all know, and all of that. And there's all those choices. And then the RTDs, the ready to drink cocktails you're talking about, that's what's taking the share of the alcoholic beverage market.
Have you ever had one? You ever open a can and taste it?
Yeah, and I so far haven't been impressed. Pretty sweet, but I mean, and also the hard seltzers. I mean, you have Gallows High Noon is I read 21 million cases sold last year. I read in Schenken. Well, that's going to take some share from somebody. It's hard to
share of stomach.
Some share of alcoholic beverage consumption or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's share taken from themselves, right? I mean, it might be a different sector of their company.
Well, that's the good thing if you're Gallo, right? You just swap it out.
Yeah,
you're
totally.
swapping out brands. You've got, just whatever's sticking, you stick with it or whatever.
Well, if you take a step back, I'm sure that this has happened before. I'm sure you see a bell curve every 10 years on something is taken away and then it comes back. Something takes away, it comes back. I mean, are you seeing this kind of thing over?
This was the first time in 30 years, maybe more, that there was actually, sales growth had been slowing, but this was the first time that 2023 was the first time in a long time that there, decades. Right.
Well, there's definitely cycles in the business. That's for sure. That said, what I think Sam's saying is, it has changed. I mean, you had 60 Minutes broadcast of the French Paradox comes out in 1991. And then wine consumption, if you average it out year on year, goes up about 3% compound every single year till 2016. Just phenomenal. Boom. That was a wine boom. And now then it started leveling off, and now we actually have negative growth for the first time.
What was the French paradox you were talking about in 60 minutes?
French paradox being I'm gonna mangle this, but basically that the French eat fattier foods than we do, but have a lower rate of heart attacks, heart disease.
More
thank
Mediterranean
you.
diet.
Yeah, the Mediterranean diet and all that, and
well, this was the thing that was red. The red wine was good for you.
Red wine was good for you. Red wine is good for you. There's been hundreds of studies.
Right.
Wine is good for you. There's been
Right.
hundreds of studies showing that they're moderate consumption. There's some health benefits, cardiovascular health benefits, and that actually wasn't just that 60 Minutes broadcast gets all the credit for this notion that wine is healthy and therefore people started drinking it more. The government was funding studies about alcohol and health, and they kept having these results, and then the wine industry is like, well, let's help disseminate this wonderful information, so.
But I think wine kind of lost part of its culture, though. What I'm talking about is demystifying wine. Is it used to be like this kind of James Bond kind of thing? Oh, he's drinking the 47 Lafite. And then it became, especially with people able to make wine at crush pads, that it didn't have to come from necessarily a winery that you knew of. It could have been, can be from a guy who makes 300 cases because he wants to make wine. And then, people, when they see that there's a lot of different choices out there, maybe it's not as interesting as it was before.
It's a valid argument. I mean, you can argue this either way, that wine should be demystified, but then the argument that you should mystify it more is actually there's actually something to it.
Dipping into White Claw.
Well,
right.
and look what Arini Global is doing. They are remystifying fine wines, and they've really picked up on that segment.
They have smart people working for them, so I'm sure they have done, like Leo does, McCloskey does, projects out to see what trends are going to be.
Well, and they're doing these studies in China and these workshops there in Japan and Singapore, and all these places are buying massive amounts of really good, expensive wine. So that's a trend that is bucking.
But yeah, there's a
everything
culture.
else.
So if there's a culture created around wine, then people
And that's
are
what you're
willing to
talking about,
spend money on the
mystification,
wine.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing that wine, has, that the RTDs and even the microbrews and the hard kombuchas and the high noons can never get, is the mystification, if you want to call it that. The
Hard
sense
to mystify a can.
right? You can't
Canned cocktail.
demystify high noons.
Or who made that high noon? Like
Yeah,
you want to know
is in there.
who
But
made.
so that's what wine has, right? You can talk about who made it and where it was grown and the vintage,
Sense
the
of
year,
place, yeah.
and the varietal and the blend and how it changes from year to whatever, And if that's mystification, then yeah, that is what wine has over any of these other products in the alcohol sector, and a whole lot of things that are called wine are in the alcohol sector that have none of those connections, those touch points that make wine different.
Because I think farm
And
to
those are the
table.
ones that, if you look at the numbers, right, it's really this drop in sales, the negative growth in 2023. Negative growth is a great concept, though. I love that fucking non sequitur. I have negative growth. My bank account had negative growth this month. Weird. No, you've spent more than you made.
Yeah.
It's particularly the bottom end of the market. I found a reel that I posted on my Instagram story. It's these people going and ordering the second cheapest wine at the wine shop.
I saw that.
The second cheapest wine, but it's the second cheapest and down.
Did you see the Letty Teague article about the second cheapest wine in the Wall Street Journal? It was actually pretty good. She went down that rabbit hole pretty deep with the sums. But anyway, I digress.
But it is if you look at the different price point sectors, the $50 and up is continuing to have positive growth, while the 20 and below is where that negative growth, and it's so much of the industry that if they have 10% negative growth, we all have 2% or whatever it was, right? Is that a accurate? Do you understand what I'm saying?
About the low end?
The low end,
Yeah.
the low end really fell out.
Well, it puzzles me because, you look at St. Michel Wine Estates in Washington State, and great wine for $10, and people aren't buying it. Right. I personally don't get it, but that's just me.
So what are the trends? What is going up?
Well,
I mean,
you were talking about that Outlook and Trends article, and so who's doing well? I mean, we're talking the mass market. We're not talking on an individual basis with small wineries. That some of them are doing great. Paso Robles is doing really well. So,
And hold on? Let's dig a little bit into that. Is it that people like going there and drinking those wines? Is it the style of wine you think that they're making, or is it that it's like a new undiscovered thing?
probably all of the above, but I'd say that it's the new undiscovered thing is probably would be my guess.
Okay.
But in terms of, like you look at somebody like Hope Family Wines, they were one of the big wine companies that's up this year. They're at like 650,000 cases or something like now. They're doing really well because people want Paso, and there's a couple brands there that are doing really well.
Well, Dow just sold too, right?
Dow, yeah, huge shot in the arm.
Bill.
Yeah.
Cool $1 billion.
Camus, they're one that flies under the radar that's just killing it right now. I mean, they've got, if you look in the Nielsen numbers and you look at the brands and you say, okay, who's actually grown during this, there's only a handful. And so Gallo we already talked about that. They, whatever, right. It's going to work for them no matter what. And they've got a couple brands that are doing great.
Yeah.
And then Terlato, But it's mostly Hope Family and Camus. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There might be a couple others that I'm forgetting, but those are the ones. Those are the ones that actually buck the trend.
So it's the ones that are on the other end, are like the Constellation, the Treasury, the vintage.
Yeah, and of course Constellation, as you guys all know because you follow the industry so well, know about it. They sold off all those brands to Gallo back in 2019, and they're we're premium. But even they were killing it too, and even they aren't immune to this thing that happened with the wholesalers cutting down on the
Wrong
inventory.
time to be looking for a job with Constellation, I'm sure.
It sounds like it's a difficult place to work.
Unless you want to come in and slash cost and sell things off, and in that typical MBA fashion.
Well, they're doing a good job with the marketing, and they have the money to throw at it, so they do some interesting stuff. Yeah.
Well, we were mentioning before about focus group brands and real brands. 16600 is Phil, Sam, Enterprise Vineyards. You don't have to go to a focus group to get this concept.
We couldn't have.
It's real. Yeah.
That'd have been a fucked up focus group. What are you guys on? Why aren't you sharing? Yeah.
How many do you guys... Do you see people routinely still going out and creating brands and brand images and things like that? Because I see it a lot. You really see it in the grocery store where people are putting it on a label with a name and a concept, and it's getting hokey.
Well, it's the same wine that was they couldn't sell it with another brand, and they relabel it and try and call it another brand and see what happens, right?
Yeah, that kind of goes in cycles. The second label thing.
New product introduction.
It was big in the last glut for sure, but that's when wine sales were going up. It's less of a thing now, just because the wholesalers are rationalizing brands. So try and sell them on a new brand. You better have a good pitch.
Reason, right?
Yeah.
So they're not taking those. They're not taking the repackaged brands.
There's probably a couple of them that are working. Yeah. Right. I don't know.
Well, distributors, they want to flog what they got when they get paid for. That's it. It's just
everybody. And I think that's the end line is the distributors pulled back because they had pressure. They weren't getting the sales out of their accounts, right? I mean, that's how it all sort of trickles up or trickles down.
There really hasn't been a lot of new stuff with the big guys in the last year or so, because you talk to them, they're like, we're hunkering down, we're simplifying, we're getting our margins together, all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, when we were talking to Silicon Valley Bank, and we were looking at some numbers of glut of grapes on the market, how much how much Napa Cab is on the market?
Pinot, Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah. I mean, it's massive. I mean, what's that doing to the prices?
Well, nothing yet, because there's no market, is what I'm told.
So they're just storing it? How do they store all that crap, Sam?
Big tanks.
Barrels.
Tanks and barrels.
Okay.
Yeah, tanks and barrels. But then also, like I said, a lot of fruit, and even, it's also such a weird year, 23, when we can talk about that. I know there's questions about the vintage, because it was, a cooler, slower ripening vintage. A lot of people, a lot of wineries, and probably a lot of big guys took it as a opportunity to exercise clauses in their contracts to reject fruit based on chemistry or mildew or whatever it was, and a lot of fruit was left hanging out there, where in previous years, because there was places for that wine to go, they would have taken that fruit and you take underripe Cabernet from a cool growing season and cool region, and dump in a gallon of Mega Purple and stir it up, and all of a sudden you got more Cabernet. I imagine that isn't happening as much because there isn't that market for those wines as much, right?
All right, let's go to Zinfomercial's question. How is the 2023 vintage shaping up in barrel and bottle?
I am extreme, and I've been saying this to everyone. I am bullish on the quality of the 23 vintage. We don't get to experience cool climate California very often in the way that we did in 2023. It wasn't a very hot summer. We had a few real big heats, hot days, but there was no like prolonged heat waves. We had some early harvest rains, that really like dragged on the ripening curve. It was basically a 3-month harvest that all happened in 3 weeks at the end of October, the beginning of November. So, really, really nice flavors, subtle flavors, good acid. I'm excited. Best vintage in quality wise in 4 or 5 years probably. So
speaks volume.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be great. Just starting to bottle things.
Tonnage wise, was it a huge crop?
Some varieties. We had a lot of Zinfandel. Grenache was sort of average. Some things were down a little bit. I think again it was sort of all over the map by region, but also I think as a state tonnage was sort of down. But I think again a lot of that was fruit that didn't get harvested. So the fruit was there. Just yields look lower because it got left out there.
Cyril, do you have any advertisers for making your own wine at home? Because we have a question on that.
No, there's another magazine for that. What's it called? Winemaker? Have you?
That's right.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elena.
But John, there's a place in Santa Rosa. Do you remember what it's called? If you make beer or wine, there's a great shop in Santa Rosa that I have gone to before. It's called like the wine store or the beverage
The beverage people.
The beverage people. Thank
people.
you.
Yeah, the beverage people. We can buy like we used to buy olive oil bottles from them because they had small numbers of bottles and stuff like that.
Yeah, and if you need if you're making wine at home, probably you're not putting stuff in a barrel. You probably need a carboy. The glass things that you make beer in. So you can get all of the equipment that you need and the little things that bubble on the top of your barrel or carboy, all that stuff you can get.
Have you tried it at home?
I made beer at home and I got everything at that store.
And was it good?
It was great. And we made it a
Have you tried it,
family thing.
Napa Fermentation Supplies does the same thing over there on the fairgrounds.
Huh?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I went to there's a club here in Sonoma of home winemakers, and I went
Shout
over
out to Les.
We're supposed to go and talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away that the wines were actually pretty good.
I've had some really good
surprised.
wines coming out of that group of Sonoma home winemaker, but also the making wine in Sonoma as a home winemaker is a distinct advantage.
Yes, there is an advantage.
Iowa.
It's not coming in the mail on a train.
Yeah, exactly. There's fruit. There's people with barrels.
You have friends that are in the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
You can figure it out.
The Sonoma home winemakers definitely have distinct advantage over the Des Moines home winemakers.
Did you ever try it?
There's a bunch of people who are members of this club, and I've had some of those wines. There's
I have a bottle in the cellar right now. If you guys want to try it,
or go grab something. Our family dentist, good friend Jeff Lopes, Dr. Lopes, retired, but he has a little backyard vineyard. And he had a highly sought after, expensive vineyard consultant helping him on his vineyard and winemaking.
And you've got a dentist. I've got an orthopedic surgeon, and I tasted some mashup that he brought down the other day.
And not so much.
Yeah, was it
Are you
interesting?
talking about Lowenberg's wine?
Yeah.
Oh, but not again. So quote unquote,
David. Call me David.
Dr. David Lowenberg. Home winemaker, quote unquote, has a degree in enology from UC Davis. Decided, or maybe his parents decided that,
as well as teaching orthopedic surgery.
Yeah, that he should
At
instead of being a winemaker, that he had to be a orthopedic surgeon, and then he went to Stanford and got a degree, and he's got his medical degree. So again, the home winemakers of Sonoma are certainly,
that's mine.
Are certainly greater than your average home winemaker, and I hope Les and the home winemakers hear us talking about this. I actually want to get them on the show.
Excellent.
Come talk about it.
And if you do well, then you're a garagiste.
Yeah, exactly.
So
then you have to get legal. And
I love the fact that Brian brought this bottle out.
So this is from Greg Foley, a wine club member who
It's labeled for podcast.
Well, I put that on there because I told he brought it in the other day. I said we'll open it up on the show, and what's really funny is that his daughters made the label, and they labeled it, I think, 2022 Dornfelder, but really it was 21. It was kind of a surprise for him. So then you can see on the label he had to go and
the little
cover up and put on the correct handwrite the correct.
Sheep in wolves' clothing.
Hand wrote in the ABV.
Now, so what's the grape?
Dornfelder. Yeah, figure that one out.
Is the variety is Dornfelder?
I've never heard of a Dornfelder.
Okay, look it up.
Well,
just like Blaufränkisch. It sounds like one of the.
Blaufränkisch just one of them is just Spätburgunder is just like Pinot Noir, right?
Oh,
no back label.
Cheers.
No, this is not a.
I like the
wine
sheep
sold
with
in
the
it.
wolf clothing. That's a nice like little play on it. You got
like
a
it.
sheep with the wolf.
That's good wine, too.
jacket on.
Excellent. For a Dornfelder?
The best Dornfelder I've had all week.
I've ever had. Seriously.
Great color.
Where do you get a Dornfelder? Do you grow it yourself? I mean, it's not Enterprise Vineyard.
Reductive.
Dornfelder red wine.
Dornfelder, but that's the thing. So you can go to these, home winemaker, home brewery supply places, and you can get frozen berries. You can get juice concentrate. You can get
Like old orange juice.
Totally, yeah, exactly. We used to sell grapes to a guy whose name is what was his name? And most of what he had a wine brand, but also he would take fruit and crush it and stem it and put it into 5-gallon buckets and freeze it, and then you could, home winemakers could buy those, buy as much or they wanted to make, and you could go and you buy organically grown Dos Limones Zinfandel. Why am I blanking on that? He's a great guy.
So to answer this next question,
Company
what's
called
the
Prospero. Prospero pretty much, I think, sells most of the home winemakers their grapes in the country. They ship them to the East Coast. They also sell winery equipment. You guys probably.
I was going to say, John, I have a couple more bottles from Dan Bixby, one of our wine club members, from Idaho, where the fruit was purchased though in Walla Walla, sent out to Idaho. They made the wine in Idaho and then released it.
Dan, I didn't know you were making wine.
He's not making wine; he's buying.
No. He just dropped it for us.
Oh,
to
okay.
He did in a response to my Instagram post for questions for this show. Ask who our favorite Idahoans were.
Always Dan.
Yeah, well,
Early adapter to the podcast.
no, I have
one of the very first.
some of Dan's friends that he's brought have become my favorite Idahoans. Sorry, Dan. No, I'm just joking.
Well, let's follow up. Is Dornfelder?
Oh, I like this.
Did we find anything about Dornfelder?
Is-
It had a little.
Oh, yeah.
There was a little like reduction, but it kind of blew
Is
off.
Dornfelder the dark horse varietal that's up and coming?
The big variety for
2024?
go in on
The future?
Dornfelder. You have to find some.
The new
Where is it?
Gallo.
Well, it's easy to pronounce.
I think I
helps.
met Dornfelder
That
in
is-
college.
that is a
Dornfelder is an easygoing, everyday red wine that is light in body with low tannins and crisp acidity. While the majority are dry, some are made off dry. Aromas of bramble, red fruits, fresh cherry, blackberry, blackcurrant, plum.
I'll give you that. Yeah. It's very deep.
It's got
Deep in flavors.
that definitely a lot of like black cherry going on, cherry flavors. Not a ton of tannin. I wouldn't say it was hugely acidic,
Not at all.
but much lighter in body than the color would have suggested. It's
For
dark.
sure, yeah. Kind of like Lagrine. Reminds me of Lagrine a little bit, where it's super dark in color, but
And a German variety, I'm assuming.
it sounds pretty German.
Yeah,
Germanic.
Like I think Lagrine
we need
is
like a Morgan. We need an MW to tell us about Dornfelder.
yeah. No, I know Lagrine is Swiss-Austrian border or
Right,
whatever
right.
kind of wine. This, and I don't know where he got it from. Who knows where he got the grapes from?
Cyril, you had mentioned sending wine, like frozen wine, to the East Coast and making it. But before we got on the air, we were talking about the trends, sales trends. And you said that the East Coast was really bucking all these trends.
Right. Well, that's what I'm hearing. Right now, lot of our folks from our company are in Syracuse, New York for the Eastern Winery exhibition that we present. It's our show.
And you're not there?
I'm not in Syracuse right now.
Wow.
How is Syracuse
Darn.
in March?
A little cold, a little warmer this year. It's actually not bad. I was there one year for this show, and it was 0, and with the wind chill, it was below 0. So we were indoors basically.
Good red wine weather.
Yeah, but right. So if you look at the numbers of tasting room visitation, Napa, Sonoma, Oregon, Washington, it's down a little bit overall, right? On average, if you look at the community benchmark data and ship compliant data, all that. Some of the East Coast wineries are doing really well because they hadn't really developed their tasting room programs before, and COVID forced them to, and a lot of them still have positive momentum. So there's a lot of enthusiasm, and
and you would think it's a kind of a cool thing for people that are in those other states. When someone opens up a wine tasting room next to you, that it would be fun to go to a tasting room without having to fly out to Sonoma or Napa or Washington or Syracuse.
And there seems to be fewer restrictions on what they're able to do, so they're more like a party space, like a bar. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a good way.
Yeah.
And also, I think the buy local trend. I think people that visit those tasting rooms are ordering cases of wine from their local winery too, which is cool.
Yeah, we see that all the time.
Something that like Paul Mabry was talking about when we talked to him 4 or 5 years ago, that pre-pandemic, that the cost of travel makes it so that people are going to seek local alternatives more often
instead of zooming with you.
Instead of zooming with us. We haven't done a Zoom tasting in forever. Yeah. Not complaining. If you want to reach out, well, Brian can do it. It's.
Are you ready for your close-up, Brian?
So yeah, it makes sense that if you're in this sort of emerging grape growing, and not to say that New York is an emerging grape growing region, it's pretty established grape growing region, but Virginia, places like that, Georgia.
Well, Georgia's blowing up for you guys.
Well, that's because we got a distributor there.
Yeah. But it seems like
shout out Empire Distributors, Georgia, Eric
Cork on the
Crane,
road.
Bill Pencava, Timo, Tiffany Morris. We love all you guys. Hope you're listening.
Pretty sweet mess, and to Kelly Cornett, who has Cork in the Road podcast. I mean, she is like the glue in that community. It's every time you see her on Instagram, she's out to dinner with all these somms and people that are wine buyers, and I mean they just do.
It's like they just discovered wine and they're having fun.
No, you know what? I think that part of it is driven by the distributors not having as much success with these, sort of established stodgy brands bringing in more interesting, more fun things. People, sure, it's all Cabernet Pinot Noir, but people are drinking more different varietals and being, different regions, not just France, not just Spain, being more adventuresome so that, and there's more access to these wines, there's more access to the information about them. It's diluting what was these sort of like juggernauts of varietal and region, right?
Right, because it's kind of cool to talk about a Dornfelder. Like if you bring this to the party, you're the center of attention for a little while because everyone's like, "What the fuck is Dornfelder?" Right. Or what's Trousseau Gris? What's Mission Grape? I've never had that before. And I love that all these things are starting to come back around a little bit, where people want to try things that their parents weren't drinking. They don't want to drink Cab and Pinot. They want to try a 12.8%
Saint
Laurent from Carneros.
Which is maybe why I just read that imports are actually up versus domestic wine, especially with the young people. This is what
pricing,
Curtis Mann from Albertsons Safeway was saying.
Yeah.
So even like those big grocery stores are selling more. They're selling imported wine.
Imports are up even by couple percentage points, while domestic down a couple percentage points. Yeah.
But I can totally see that when you go to Bottle Barn or to Safeway, wherever you get your wine, if you're gonna take a shot on a wine you've never heard of, a $12 shot is better than taking a $38 shot on a wine that you don't know anything about. And I have no idea. I know Patrick Cappiello was
Buy American
kind of
campaign
digging into this a little bit, but I don't know how you get a bottle of wine to the United States and sell it for $13 on a store shelf. I don't get how that's possible, but that's because we live in this community too, where we see that you have to pay every single person a living wage to put this glass of wine that's on the table right here. It's probably been touched by, not this particular wine, but the Homage Blanc, was touched by 20, 30 people. And so I don't understand how you get the pricing down to that point.
No mortgage, mass production, certainly not organic.
Government subsidies.
No.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, look what they're doing in France to the Spanish when they import Spain's wine into France. They hijack the loads and empty the tankers on the highway.
Spill them on the highway with axes and pitchforks. But the French love a good axe and pitchfork.
Yeah, you gotta love that, man.
Torches, axes, pitchforks, blockade the road with tractors, dump manure on Paris, whatever it takes. We could learn a lot.
Who would Sonoma attack?
Hey, it's all infighting, right?
It's their own fault,
right? Yeah, Napa. Let's dump a bunch of manure on Highway 121, block the road so you can't go to Napa anymore. There we go. Wine Business
Highway
Monthly.
20.
That would be the front. That'd be the top headline in the
cover story.
Right? Yeah.
Where do you get your cover stories? I mean, we were actually on the cover once. We were influencers.
You are leaders. You're part of our leadership group. That's right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Where do we get our covers? When we can find a pretty picture, usually we.
So when they put
go
us on it, they were really low on pretty pictures. Clearly.
Cover story of the April issue is about the neo-prohibitionist movement and the World Health Organization being hijacked by temperance groups that go back hundreds of years. And
What?
And the World Health Organization came out with a statement last year saying no amount of alcohol is healthy. No amount of alcohol consumption. And then, the U.S. dietary guidelines.
But based on
food.
what? Based on one study that killed.
Well, that's a sticky wicket and a deep rabbit hole, but based on studies. But then when the research becomes politicized, like what happened with COVID, you have agendas, and the research doesn't necessarily, isn't necessarily objective, or good research is packaged badly.
But I like the term neo-prohibitionist.
Yeah, and going further on this, like the temperance organizations that are, 100 years. I mean, talking
basically
about the people that pushed through prohibition in this country, alcohol prohibition 100 years ago. Those are the same groups that are coming back out.
Earlier we were talking about the French paradox and all the positive stuff that happened with all the good news about the health benefits of moderate wine consumption, and this is sort of the boomerang effect against that. You could say, where there's an organized opposition
the Republican
to alcohol.
response to the State of the Union.
It was a long time coming, but they've gotten pretty organized.
If only it was that
bad. And then the U.S. dietary guidelines include recommendations about how much alcohol we should all consume, right? And they're updated every 5 years, and it's for men it's 2 drinks a day, and for women it's 1 drink a day is what's recommended by the U.S. government.
Women get less.
Women get less. I guess they can metabolize less. This was all justified by science, I'm sure. They're updated every 5 years. Well, Canada has a similar thing, and they just came out with, hey, you can only 2 drinks per week is healthy for you. This is Canada's recommendation. So there's a fear that next year that the U.S. dietary guidelines could say 2 drinks a week because of all of the lobbying that's going on, which is intense.
And who's the
I was going
audience?
to say, who's doing this lobbying? And like these, who's doing
a
small amount of very loud people, I would assume.
Exactly. The loudest people win, and they're very well organized. So, but you can read all about it in Wine Business Monthly. We list all the groups. Anyway, that's the next cover story. How did we get the cover image? Found a good photographer.
Okay. I'll take that. I like this whole temperance thing. I mean, because it shows politics is in everything these days. Yeah. But hey, and I don't think I won't say his name. Drinks at all. I'm sure Joe doesn't imbibe much.
Biden,
an occasional.
I know. I mean,
Something
Trump
good.
famously does not, although owns a winery.
Right.
You know,
has to use
Biden
flawed steaks and
gets
vodka.
high on chocolate ice cream, right? Isn't that his drug of choice? I don't know.
He eats whatever they put in front of him.
I'm sure. Pablo.
Yeah.
At some
You
point.
know, Obama drank some beer. Obama drank wine. Kamala Harris famously was a wine club member of Shauna Rosenblum's
No, I thought 16600.
Rockpile Winery before that she closed that up and went to Ridge. So, you know, there's wine drinkers, maybe not in the White House, but at least the Naval Observatory
Perfect.
in the current administration.
I like it.
If that influences your voting one way or another, I think if that does, you should
Re-examine your priorities.
expand your priorities. But no, you know, I do want my politicians to be slightly drunk. I mean, they all act drunk anyway. Might as well have a fucking reason.
It makes them a little more real just because
Yeah.
this is what people do in the world.
Yeah.
And this is not new. You go back to, Italy, they were making wine thousands and thousands of years ago. And they brought that into Spain, and they brought it into France, and even up into England. They were always carrying their wine with them.
Right. Well, it was safer than the water. Right. And might still be.
And then, then they built
places in this country,
these
the water's definitely
aqueducts with no mortar that are still standing thousands of years later, which is just blows me away because we can't do crap anymore. For $1 million a foot of something, so it's craziness. All right.
But John digresses.
I do.
This is the last time you will hear from John, too, for a little while.
Couple
'cause
weeks,
he's
man. Yeah.
Taking off, yeah.
Well, I'm going to go sample Burgundian wine where I can get it not at a retail price.
Right.
Yeah.
I can get it, served in a restaurant, and I can enjoy that. Sancerre, beautiful whites. Sancerre is this little mountain in the middle of flats, and all the way around going up the mountain are white vines, and
Sauvignon Blanc.
yeah, beautiful stuff.
The most rapidly growing variety by sales, right? Isn't Sauvignon Blanc like the hottest thing ever right
It
now?
has been the hottest thing ever. It's the next Merlot, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's our up and coming.
Right. The next variety to be overplanted and then pulled out, Sauvignon Blanc.
But it still has positive momentum. It's definitely growing.
What's tanking now? Anything?
What varieties are hurting the most? Yeah.
Well, I mean, Merlot did it, but purely on the basis of a movie.
The movie was the sort of the final nail in the coffin. I think
No more
Merlot
fucking Merlot.
Merlot was on, unless it's
Syrah, I guess.
Unless it's Petrus, right?
Oh, you've actually had a Petrus.
I have had a Petrus. It was the best Merlot I've ever had. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I believe
Latesh.
that good Merlot is poised for a comeback.
Totally.
I think I've had some great, with the wines that we grow, particularly Stone Edge Farm, that is, pretty like tied to the concept of the Bordeaux blend. They have Merlot planted in all their vineyards, and getting to taste Merlot standalone from the Moon Mountain district, grown by Enterprise Vineyards and made by Alejandro and the team at Stone Edge Farm, it's fucking fantastic wine.
Yeah.
Chances are you'll never get to taste it. It'll be in the blend, but I think there's room in this market, in this world of people being adventuresome with the varieties. For a
Wow,
little Merlot
that's
comeback.
so. I love that, Sam. That you've somehow constructed this to where Merlot would be an adventurous varietal to try.
Well, it's kind. I mean, that's how it's kind of.
For people our age, that seems like kind of crazy, right?
But that's kind of how it's shaping up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if there was a Merlot at Repris, or if 16600 found some Merlot that we could make, people would eat it up.
Cool climate, right?
Right, or just cool. or the climate, just the existence of the brand. An interesting version of Merlot from a good vineyard, well farmed. And a lot of the crappy Merlot's gotten pulled out, and it was Pinot, and then it was Sauvignon Blanc, or Syrah, now it's Sauvignon Blanc, until it's the next thing. I think I believe in Merlot. The next big thing for a moment.
Coming from a man who makes no Merlot.
Are there plans
right after Grenache? Right after Grenache. What's that?
Are there plans with Enterprise Vineyard? What are you going to expand into next? Because you have been expanding.
We just recently started working at a vineyard in Dry Creek, currently known as Michel Schlumberger.
I used to cater events at that winery. It's right over the little bridge. Kavira's right next door.
It's a beautiful spot. I've only seen it on the map. I haven't been up there yet. New owners. They're actually, I think it came to Enterprise through Silicon Valley Bank or whatever however it exists now. So they were looking for new vineyard development. So basically it'll be a complete replant over the next 5 or 6 years. So that, and and what is Coombsville into Solano County and Green Valley are places that we've expanded recently too, and that's actually really interesting. Your high elevation, you go through Napa to get there, but you're in Solano County. But it's not. Hold on.
Yeah, don't run over cash.
It's not a place necessarily for Cabernet, and they're looking at cooler climate varieties. They're looking at Chardonnay, Syrah. So it could be really interesting over there. So those are the directions. A little south and east, and a little north and west. Pulling the map a little bit.
Perfect. Yep. Well, Cyril, how do people subscribe to Wine Business Monthly and
the email, the daily email?
Yeah, that's the
Go to our homepage, winebusiness.com. It's easy.
Right.
Yep. Thanks for asking.
Winebusiness.com.
Absolutely.
And are you? I know I tagged you on social media on the Instagram thing coming in here. Are you? How do people follow you? Pay attention to you, or should just defer to all Wine Business Monthly?
Oh, just defer to Wine Business Monthly. No, they can find me on Twitter ranting about politics.
I like that.
You're not giving out your personal Instagram.
Oh, I'm easy to find. Cyril Penn. Yeah,
Well, leading
There's not a lot of Cyril Penns out there.
not too many. Just my son.
Are there any big events coming up that people want to go to? I mean, the team went down to DTC this year.
Well, the big one for us is YVI Central Coast coming right up at the end of the month in Paso Robles. That's like a mini unified for the Central Coast. So we're way involved with that. So that's my next big event.
Do you do Eco Farm also? Ooh.
Eco Farm is very little wine. It's mostly other farming.
Yeah, he sells equipment.
Nah, it's organic farmers. It's small organic farmers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And what are you drinking at home? I noticed that you're kind of a fan of Lang and Reed, which we really like.
Yeah, we've been over there.
I think we did a podcast there, right in the good
Downtown
Cabernet,
Napa.
kind of Loire centric. But what are you drinking at home?
What am I drinking at home? Well, I drink what my wife likes, which is usually
$12.
It's usually Côte d'Arons and Syrah and
There you
Grenache
go.
and stuff like that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's have your wife on next time then. Come on.
Why not? Well, it's interesting. Joan buys, cheap wine. Just
Secondcheapestwine.com.
yeah, certainly. And I have absolutely done that in restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Where it was just so out of sight. I don't want the cheapest, so it is the second cheapest. And the table right next to us is going through bottle after bottle after bottle of the number one on the list, which is...
The problem is the restaurants are usually out of the second cheapest wine.
Right.
Because everybody wants it.
Here's my strategy. Wine list, restaurant wine buying. Buy the cheapest, oldest wine you can find on the wine list. If you're
I'm going to push back on that.
You're going to push back on that?
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing to do on a wine list. If I look for something with the most age on it, because most restaurant wine lists have current releases, and then find the oldest wine that you can, and then find something that's the least expensive.
But
why am I wrong?
Well, because I'm thinking that there's a reason that they still have that wine. What I recommend personally is talking to either your server or the som, if they have a som,
right,
and tell them, hey, I love wine, and especially if you live here in Sonoma, I don't want to pay 3-time markup on it. I want to buy a bottle from you guys. If you came in for dinner, what would you buy that you think is one of the best deals on the wine list? And I think if you frame it to the person that works there, they get it. That
you don't have to be afraid to ask.
No, you shouldn't be afraid to ask. Yeah. No, just say, what would you buy if you came in for dinner? And ask him, what white would you buy and what red would you buy? Right. See what they say.
The server's not buying the most expensive wine on the wine list. They're buying something down in that bottom third.
Well, I remember for me, for a while on the Fairmont wine list, it was the Stone Edge Surround. When people would ask me that question, I'd say, hey, this is killer fruit. You can't get it, and it's a great price for what you're getting. So it was an easy sale.
They've raised the price on the Surround.
Believe me, they raised the price on me.
Yeah.
When I was there incredibly, but it was still, it was still really good wine for the price you were paying.
This whole discussion reminds me of, you guys know Lance Cutler from town, and the shtick he had with the wine patrol and the cape and the mask. And he would come in and he had these cards that he would leave at the restaurant about their wine prices. He had one, I think it was one card if you liked the prices, and one if they could do better. And he was on the restaurant wine pricing cause, as it were.
Lance has done a lot of good things in the wine writing world of Sonoma Valley for sure.
And I don't see a lot of restaurateurs.
Can I say it? Can we say Jake Lorenzo and Lance?
Oh yeah, it's no longer secret. It's not a secret anymore. Okay. But people still don't know. So.
Well, okay. I mean, you got to make a profit. I mean, I've seen all kinds of things happening right now.
That's what they keep telling me.
On the restaurant level.
John, it's a good point, though, is that I don't think most people realize that restaurants, how they make the most amount of money is liquor. Second most is wine. And then third is food. It's, if you look at the percentages of what they're paying for what's coming in, what they do, labor, blah, blah, blah.
Break even on food costs and make money on wine and booze, right?
Basically. So that's how you keep the restaurant in business, is to buy wine off of their wine list, and you kind of got to take the hit. What I recommend is bringing in a bottle of white wine. Sometimes they'll do a 1-for-1 corkage. So if you bring in a bottle, you pay the corkage, but then buy a bottle of red wine off the list. And even better, I recommend bringing in another bottle and giving it to either the server or the chef.
If it's good.
Well, who's going to bring shitty wine into a restaurant, John?
Don't bring. People do, but I'm sure you see it all the time. You see it all the time.
My favorite was at the Fig Cafe in Glen Ellen, because people would walk in and then they would hear someone say, "Oh, there's no corkage fee here." So then one of them, let's say it was a party of 4, one of them would turn around and walk around the corner to the liquor store and buy a bottle of the cheapest Chardonnay or whatever they could find, and then come back.
Somebody brought barefoot to a party the other day. That's like,
you know what? I might actually get down on some of that if someone brought some barefoot, because that's such a bold move. I might be totally into that.
Martha Shard,
$2 chuck.
I mean, pour me a little
it's
barefoot.
Now $6, huh?
$6 chuck.
$6. Wow.
Hey, how the world has changed, right?
That was a long time ago, man.
I mean, I always would think about $2 chuck, quote unquote $2 chuck, and be like, all right, well, if I made that, $2 is your glass, your cork, your label, and your bottling.
It's your packaging costs.
Yeah.
That's your packaging costs, right? And then $0 in what's actually in the bottle.
Well, and that's the thing. You couldn't chalk it up to marketing, because what else did they have? So it wasn't like they were getting you in the door with
Lost
the $2
leader,
chuck, and then you were buying their upper tiered brand. It was all volume. It reminds me of the Saturday Night Live commercial parody with the change bank, where you go into the change bank, you give them $50 and they'll give you 25 twos, 3 10s, 2 5s, and 10 1s. And people ask us, how do we make money just making change? The answer is easy. Volume.
We lose money on every sale.
You lose a quarter on every bottle. How do you make money? Volume.
Volume.
All right. Cyril, any shout outs to our listeners and friends? Any events coming up that you're going to?
Oh, boy, what are we doing? We're doing Wi-Fi Central Coast. Come to Wi-Fi Central Coast. That's the big one.
We got some Paso listeners for sure.
And then we're going to pivot. Wine Market Council, if you're in the industry, that's coming up on the 20th in Napa. And so we'll...
Wait, what is that about?
Wine Market Council is kind of the wine marketing arm of the wine industry. They'll be talking about market research, about what we were talking about earlier in this podcast, about what's driving sales and who's buying what and why.
Who do you have to be to go to that?
You can pay $150, I believe it is. You look at the Wine Market Council's website, or you can join. And I think it's open to anybody, pretty much. It's going to be over at Copia.
Oh, okay. That's a nice place to have a meeting. Yeah. Do you know our friends at Arini Global from Shenblue?
I have met. I've met Pauline Picard when she was in town. We got together last year, and she asked me what my definition of a fine wine is, and that's because she's an expert on that. And,
what was your definition?
Well, I mean, mine was very simple. Fine wine. My favorite wine is free wine, but
that's fine.
My answer was really simplistic, so I think I disappointed her. I mean, it was really just about and if it has a real sense of place, that you can taste.
I think you
where it came from. I mean, that was it for me. So
yeah.
Sam, shout outs. Final Sunday's coming up.
Well, we got, our list of events between now and the end of June is crazy.
I think we need to hire an events coordinator.
We are the events coordinator, Brian. Paul sets out for the High Museum wine experience and auction in Atlanta next week. So we'll be there.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
That's a big deal. What else is open to the public? And then the Tulsa wine auction every other year at the Philbrook Museum, same week that we'll be up in Hospice Daron. Trying to track down some things. Sonoma Epicurean, that's next week. A V Foundation event. Phil is on a panel with a bunch of big names. The list is amazing. It's like Jackson Family, Dumas, Winery 16600. It's always good to get on those lists. Talking about regenerative ag, and then there's a big epic party that Brian will be pouring at.
Even better.
First Vinyl Sunday of the year will be the day after the Moon Mountain District event. So the Reach for the Moon, Taste the Moon, whatever we're calling it this year, is
as long as you say district.
Moon Mountain District. June 1st. Back up at Monte Rosso. Tickets are available for that. And then stick around, make it a weekend. We're hosting the official after party at the Fairmont, taking over the food truck that night. So Saturday, June 1st.
Tony Saunders playing
live. And then June 2nd.
Man, his band is awesome.
His band is awesome.
Awesome.
Just and then awesome. June 2nd, we're doing our first Vinyl Sunday of the year right here at the Tasting House with Andy Kabak from Vetiver, DJing from his records and our records. I think we got Costas Tacos doing that. It'll be our sort of unofficial pickup party for the Phil Sent Me shipment.
Oh, I see that the Women in Wine in Sonoma, Marcia Maycumber, who I know very well, they've started to grab onto that vinyl. No, it's vinyl.
Everybody, when we first came up with Vinyl Sunday, we probably should have sat around with a bag of Phil's finest and come up with every term combination of wine and vinyl we could have come up with and trademarked it then. But people like listening to good music and drinking good wine. And I've made this analogy before, but there's a whole lot of wine out there that is the streaming service of wine. It's digital, it's compressed. It doesn't have the full range of experiences that listening to music on vinyl has.
It's all I listen to anymore.
You know, we're analog wine, analog music.
Yeah. Ooh, analog wine. Separate little side brand?
It's taken.
Okay.
I just
Already.
I just got a text from the Podfather who went to dinner at Le Grande Boucherie in Chicago, new French restaurant. And I
Sounds fancy, John.
asked him what he got.
Was it his birthday dinner?
Escargot. Yes, it was.
Okay.
Birthday. Steak
birthday, Ed.
tartare, onion soup. He's a freak about French onion soup, and steak frites. So,
What did he drink?
okay.
Whiskey.
And then
Claw.
also our first Vinyl Sunday at the Barn, June 23rd. And we're working out the guest list, the performers for that right now. But the Grateful Bluegrass Boys are on the bill. We're going to do some barbecue cookout. It's right around the summer solstice, so we're going to go pretty late into the night for us. And
That's going to be fun.
so those tickets will all be on sale
What a
soon.
nice place to have a show.
It is such a great
That's
place.
nice.
We're going to do 2 of them this year out
Sweet.
there. And it's just a great place to hang out and listen to some music, drink some wine, eat some food, be with the community.
Brian, well, Bart is at his new
Go get tanked with
tasting
Bart.
tank. So get tanked with Bart. Yes,
Yeah,
that's a good
if
thing.
you're coming to town, you should definitely go taste with Bart over at the new tasting
I
space.
think you
And
can
then
book appointments on his website yet, or how's he doing? Just
I'm
email
sure.
Bart.
I think Bart said just call him.
Text Bart, send a smoke signal.
Probably on his website he has a phone number.
Yeah.
That you could just call him or text him. I just wanted to say a big thank you to the wine club members of 16600. It's been fun the last couple of weeks to have them come in, and a lot of them are also podcast listeners, and so we've had a good time. And honestly, really appreciate the fact that they like good wine, support us, and like the show. And
They don't listen to the World Health Organization, thank God.
I guess not. But it's a cool little community that's been created, and it's nice to be a part of it. And I just wanted to make sure we said thank you to them.
Well said, Brian. Thank you.
And always thanks to the listeners. Review.
Right. Subscribe, review.
Subscribers. Yeah.
Tell your friends, but only the cool ones.
There you go. Perfect. Well, Cyril Penn, thank you so very much. Editor of Wine Business Monthly here, the leading provider of wine industry information and events. There you go.
And if nothing else,
Right from the business card.
go get that. Go to the website, sign up for that daily email. Whether you're just a wine drinker or deep in the business, I don't know. I could not function as a whatever my title is here at Winery 16600 without the information that I read every morning from that email. So,
What is your
thanks
title?
Thanks a lot, sir.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't think anyone really has a title here. You do whatever you're told.
Cyril has a title.
Yeah.
And I'm the boomer. That's
You're
why-
the boomer.
Yeah.
Yeah, running the equipment, which is weird.
Yeah, the boomer on technology.
Why not? Why not? Hey, it's a radio gig, right? What can I do? I'm leaving here and going to another radio show.
Yeah, bon voyage.
Yeah. Unless we're recording Monday or Tuesday early, I am out of here. I'll see you guys in
Can you come back speaking French?
mid-April. Canard. Vin Rouge. Cassoulet. What else? That's about it.
All you need.
Gendarme.
There you go.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.